Governor, you served under, uh, let's see, George Busbee was majority leader and then governor for 8 years while you were in the House. And I was wondering about your relationship with him during that period.
Very good relationship. He was, as you indicated, majority leader of the House, and I was, during most of that period of time, chairman of the Appropriations Committee of the House, and we served together on the Conference Committee on the budget before he was elected governor, and particularly during the last year when he was running for governor, we were the conferees on the budget. And then I was Appropriations Chairman during the whole 8 years that he was in the governor's office, and worked with him almost directly from the General Assembly level or from the legislative level, and the position that he held in, but our relationship was very workable.
I know the Appropriations Committee was one of your chief interests while you served in the legislature. You were chairman of it for a number of years. Could you define more specifically some of the issues that you emphasized, some of the particular programs or ideas that you were able to stress from that position on the committee?
I guess in the area of the budget, the items that I would be most pleased with that I think is having a continuing impact has been the shortfall reserve fund, that we did not have any mechanism for a shortfall reserve fund other than we had a standard reserve of, I believe, $22 million that had been established many, many years ago until 1975, the first year that Governor Busbee was in office. We had to go back that year and cut the budget drastically, and at that time it was very painful to cut salaries that had been offered increases and cut some of the agencies back very deeply. That we felt the shortfall reserve fund would have been something that we should have, and we passed legislation creating that reserve fund, which today made up of 3% of your prior year's revenues, and then another 1% that is for the midterm adjustment that gives you an adequate amount to deal with the emergencies that you might have. And even since I have been governor, we've been able to completely fill that shortfall reserve fund. When I took office, there was only $637,000 in reserves, and it should have been at that time in excess of $100 million. The budget was a little over $3 billion, between $3 and $3.5 billion. Now the budget is nearly $6 billion in a 5-year period, and the shortfall reserve fund is in excess of $200 million. And so it's totally filled, and we've been able to do that even without a tax increase too. Another item that I think has been very important is our fiscal responsibility in the management of our bonded indebtedness. Georgia has always had a ceiling limit, and it used to be that we could not have over 10% of our prior year revenues committed as debt service. That has been lowered in the new Constitution since I have been a member of the General Assembly. You can't have over 8% now, which is not that much of a limiting factor because we've never normally been that high in Georgia anyway. We manage our debt at a lot lower percentage, but our bond ratings have increased in the last 4 years or during this administration. Normally, the rule of thumb has been that states either hold their own or go down in the recent years. Very few states have been increased. We now have a AA rating with one of the rating agencies, and our AA plus, and a AAA rating with the other, Standard & Poor's and Moody's. And I think that's a very positive reflection on our fiscal responsibility and our management of our bonds. During the period of time that I was chairman of the Appropriations Committee, we had a number of years that we did not borrow any money. That we operated with a cash flow that was created. That was during the high interest time, and again, that was an asset to the state that we didn't increase the total level of the indebtedness. And now, since I've been governor, we have been able to leverage through the arbitrage provisions that we had in the federal laws that allow us to do that, to borrow money and then invest it and make money off it to retire old indebtedness. Well, we bought back old bonds at 40 or 50, 60 cents on the dollar, and reduced a large chunk of our prior indebtedness through the financial mechanisms that were available to us. But again, it falls into that category of managing the state money. And I think the experience I had as appropriation chairman for all those years, and then the business background that I had, has enabled me to be able to be a part of putting those initiatives together that has helped Georgia have really one of the, I guess, the most stable financial operations of any of the states.
I believe you also served on the Highways Committee and the Motor Vehicles Committee. Why did you serve on them? Did you have particular interest in those areas?
Well, actually, I served on 4 standing committees: the Highways, the Motor Vehicles, and Appropriations, and Ways and Means. My chairmanship of Appropriations made me an ex officio member of the Ways and Means, so I had 4 standing committees. The reason that I was on the Highways Committee was that of course, you always have interest in your transportation system and the advancement of it and the improvement of it. And that was a important committee to be involved in. And motor vehicles was one that I was appointed to earlier in my career in the General Assembly. That actually I never did request that committee, but you can only really devote your efforts to 1 or 2 areas that you're very much interested in or that you want to specialize in, and appropriations was always my specialty, and where I enjoyed serving the most and took the most of my time, and particularly after I became chairman. So all of these other committees became a little secondary along the way, and you were still involved in it, but the bulk of your time was spent with appropriations matters.
While you served in the legislature seemed to become more independent of the governor. And of course, now you're serving as governor, you have to deal with the legislature. I was wondering, since you've seen both sides of the fence, how do you view this development of an independent legislature?
Well, I think the independence was something that was warranted, and it's worked well. When I became a member of the General Assembly, well, actually the governors appointed the speakers of the House and the leadership on the committees, and suggested the committee assignment because, of course, the governor was choosing the speaker. And the Appropriations Committee, for instance, I doubt if it met a total of a few hours to adopt a budget when I first came to the General Assembly. You rubber stamp the governor's proposal. That'd be great. I'd like that as governor, but realistically, I think it needs to go through the debate and the process. It's too much responsibility really to place on an administration to say that just because I recommend something it's naturally going to be accepted and right. But I think it is divided in a proper and a relative way at present. I think there's enough independence, but then again, I think the governor has enough leverage to be able to get the job done. I think our track record and the accomplishment we've had and the working relationship we've had with the General Assembly proves that it has been the case. I wouldn't feel that the governor's authority or power needs to be eroded any further. I think it's a proper relation is the way it is right now. And as a member of the General Assembly, I felt like that we had proper recognition at that time as far as independence is concerned. But I feel the House should choose their leader. They should appoint their committee assignments, and they should decide who's going to be the chairman of the committees, and that shouldn't be dictated by the executive branch, since we are 3 separate branches of government, from the executive to the legislative to the judicial. So it's a workable situation.
Before we get into the election, let me ask one more question about the General Assembly, a rather general question. If you had the power to reform the General Assembly in any way you desired, what changes would you make in it?
If I had the power, I wouldn't even suggest changes from this perspective or this level. The Constitution has provided the working relationship and designated those powers and authorities, I think, very, very clearly, and it's working well. And again, if I had ideas on how it should be changed, I think that's something that I probably should express after I'm out of office and not while I'm here in office, because could be misunderstood, and I'm not trying to reform the General Assembly by any means. Our relationship has been one of very workable, and I don't feel like that I should be recommending changes to that body as such, but we have made changes since I've been governor as far as accountability on financial disclosure and those kind of things that they work with me on that we have to accomplish. And if there are other needed changes during the time that I'm here that we foresee, certainly I'd be an advocate of it and supportive of those changes. But to specify and pick out something I would recommend at this moment, I don't have any.
But I gather in general terms, at least, that you're fairly content with the size of the House, the size of the Senate, the length of the session, and the number of committees.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be supportive of lengthening the session at all. I think the 40-day session is adequate. When I first came to General Assembly, we had a 45-day session on the even years and a 40-day session on the odd years, I believe, or vice versa. And that has been changed since I've been in General Assembly. When I came, we had 205 members in the House, and it's been reduced twice since that time to reapportionment, and which I think has been proper. But the numbers work well as far as trying to distribute the General Assembly members throughout the state. We do have 159 counties, and I have always felt like that every single county ought to have a representative in the General Assembly of Georgia, just as every single state has a representative in Congress, or at least in the Senate. It's proportioned that way. But the courts decided differently and decided that both houses ought to be representative of the population. And that requires, or at least I think it dictates the need for probably a few more members than you would have had you had every county allowed to have a representative in the General Assembly because of that local government or that county being in existence. So the numbers are workable, and the arrangement is workable, and the number of days I think is proper. I would hope or wish that Congress might have had a certain day limit on the number of days they could stay in Washington. I think we'd have a lot more accomplished a lot quicker, and wouldn't have as much procrastination and a delay and putting off and hoping things are going to work out itself before the Congress addresses some of the matters that are before them. We know what's required in 40 days, and we know that you've got to prioritize some of the issues that you're going to consider. And I think in 40 days you can consider plenty of bills and enough to disrupt state government without any question. So there's a lot of control that has to be exercised in a short period of time, but looking at other states and some of the problems they're having, and maybe we're not having those problems, and it may be because of the orderliness of our operations within the General Assembly. So the arrangement works well.
In 1982, you made your first statewide campaign. You ran for governor and you were elected. What made you think that you could win that race?
Well, I guess anybody that has ever entered any competition, you feel like you can win or you wouldn't enter. And I didn't have any illusion to think that I was going to be anointed just because I was running. I was going to win. I knew that it was going to require an awful lot of dedication, hard work, and raising money, and putting together a campaign that would be acceptable by the people, and also not getting into a position that a lot of times you feel like people do that are running for offices, that would want to appeal to the emotions of the moment, then when they get in office not be able to serve or carry out the commitments that they've made. And I was trying to be not only responsible, but be responsive to the issues of the time. And I felt like the experience I had as a member of the General Assembly for all those years, and the experience I had as a businessman, would be valuable in the management of the state's affairs. And Georgia is a big business. If you compare us to the Fortune 500 corporations, we would probably be a 71st or 72nd in the whole range. It's a big business, and so it requires proper management. And I felt like I had that expertise to offer. And by virtue of the fact that I had that experience and felt that way, I felt like I could win.
Who were some of the key people in your campaign, your advisors and supporters, and those that worked most closely with you?
Well, in the campaign organization, Joel Cowan was the chairman of the campaign committee, The background on Joel was that we grew up in Cartersville. His dad was the former mayor of the city, and Joel and I were classmates in the same class. He was president of the senior class. I was vice president, and he was end on the football team. I was quarterback. He dropped all my passes, and that's why I didn't play football any longer. And seriously, we did compete together in sport. And on basketball, we played together on the same team. And he went to Georgia Tech. I went to the University of Georgia. But then we'd always been friends, and he was in a position to help me in the campaign, and he did as the chairman of it. Gracie Greer Phillips, who is the daughter of John Greer, who is a longtime legislator and a friend of mine for a long time, was the treasurer of the campaign, and she dedicated an awful lot of time and committed a lot of her efforts and her family's efforts to help us in the financial end of it and support from that level. And most of our senior executive assistants that are even here today, from Tommy Lewis to Rusty Sewell to Rick Stansel, and even Jackie Beavers was involved at some point in time in the campaign and at some levels in coordinators or other positions. Mike DeBector, who had been here and has now left for private business, was involved in the campaign. He was a senior executive assistant. But then we had other close friends and supporters from the General Assembly and throughout the state that was very helpful. To name a few of those, our floor leader in the House, Larry Walker, was very instrumental and helpful in the initial arrangement of the campaign, and other House members that too numerous, I guess, to try to mention individually. Tom Perdue, who was at that time the executive secretary for Governor Budley, had been a long-time friend and was certainly a confidant and advisor during that period of time. And it didn't conflict with his position as governor, as a position he held for Governor Budley, but it was very helpful to me to help me have a different perspective than what we had envisioned, and a familiarization of what was going to be required, and it was very helpful. But I guess probably the most help as far as encouragement and support to keep going when times got the most tiring, and keep going when funds were low and money was not coming in when you thought it ought to be, was probably my own immediate family, my wife and my son, and also my brother, sister, and father and mother. You always knew they were there, and you had the encouragement that anyone would need in such an undertaking from your own immediate family that it was valuable to you. And I was very grateful, and they're still my staunchest supporters and helpers, and people that pray for us on a daily basis.
I know campaigning has become very expensive. Would you estimate the total cost of that campaign?
Yes, of course it's all documented on the financial disclosures, but it was in excess of $4 million, counting the interest that we had to pay on loans that were established. But we never envisioned at the outset, based on other campaigns, that it would be that expensive. But I believe that if we go back and check the records, we were probably outspent on every phase of the campaign. In the primary, I know we were outspent. In the runoff, I know we were outspent. And in the general election, I think at that point, we were outspent as far as new money that was injected into the campaign. But all of the polls that were made, and we never commissioned a poll from our campaign. They couldn't afford it. They didn't need to spend the money. I knew my name identification was low, and we didn't spend money on the polls to confirm that. We had our own, what we call our old backyard indicators, that we were doing polling on our own, but it was an unsophisticated layman's venture. But I'll have to admit it was very, very close to what the other polls were saying. It let us realize that we had our work cut out for us, and that our name identification was very low, even after having spent, when the first polls were taken in the fall before the election the next year, and the other candidates were making the polls. And they would brag about the results, and there were some independent polls made at the same time that we were made aware of. I never registered, I don't believe, above 5% as far as name identification, but even after having spent at that time 17 and a half years in General Assembly. In the year prior to running for governor, I had made over 1,000 speeches around the state and drove myself personally to all of them, and most all of them anyway. I would have thought, well, my identification would have been a little higher, and maybe being chairman of the Appropriations Committee, that more folks would have known that you were here and that you were chairman, but they might have known about the position, but they didn't identify it with who you were. And I registered very low, and actually it was probably among the lowest in the group of people that were running. But that gives you an incentive that you know you've got to work hard, and we had a dedication and commitment to work harder and longer than any of the other candidates, and I believe we did.
Well, it must have paid off. Or you got the votes in the final analysis. But in the primary on August 10th, you came in second to vote in, with about 25% to his 35%. And then Norman Underwood, Jack Watson, and Billy Lovett had substantial totals as well. But in the runoff, you defeated Yin rather convincingly. How do you explain this rather drastic shift of support to you from these other candidates?
Well, we started at NK very low, and we didn't have anywhere to go but up. Some of the other candidates started fairly at a decent level, and they could go down as well as they could go up, and then a lot of them kind of languished in that position without going up or down even throughout the campaign. But we started low, and our momentum started building, and we started moving, and you could feel the rise in the interest and the support and the anticipation and the contributions. We probably had more small individual contributions in numbers than any of the other candidates, and I think that's probably an indication of what was happening during that period of time. And I don't think our momentum ever slacked off or quit. It kept on moving forward, gaining, and of course we went into the primary with momentum moving faster than any of the other candidates and made the runoff, which was like a win for us. All the disadvantages were in our campaign, and the advantages we felt like were in some of the others, but that momentum didn't quit. It kept on going right on through the runoff, and it just rose right on up and was able to win there. But again, I think it was based on the kind of campaign that we ran. It was a grassroots level campaign. We probably had more coordinators working in all the counties than any of the other campaigns. We had an excellent media. I think the media in our campaign tried to portray Joe Frank Harris as Joe Frank Harris, not Joe Frank Harris as a slick Fifth Avenue candidate. And the words I said was my words and not something someone wrote for me. And evidently people related to that. Then we had unique to Georgia campaign, radio talkathons that had never happened before. We had nearly 100 stations around the state that we had on a daily hookup that we would answer questions and respond and just talk to the people. Well, I had them twice a day at one point in time in the later stages of the campaign, and we did that in the primary, also in the runoff, and in the general election. And people not only heard the issues, but they were hearing my position, and I realized I was human, I suppose, because I was making a lot of the same mistakes and trying to explain and get my point of view across that other people were making, and they related to that possibly. But I'm not sure that you can look back, and right now I guess I could look back and say, well, we ran a textbook campaign because everything fell in place at the right time, and it looked like you knew what you were doing. But realistically, you had to go on a gut reaction and do what you felt was proper and right at the moment, and with a lot of questions at the time. Well, is this going to be right, or is this the thing that we need to put our money in, or do we need to make one more round of TV advertising, or do we need to have the radio talkathon? Those are questions that you have, but you go into it with attitude, well, if I lose and didn't go ahead and do what I thought I might ought to do, then the responsibility is mine, and I felt like that I had to do everything that I could do, work every hour I could work, and travel every mile I could travel to be sure that I didn't look back and have a regret saying, well, I cut it a little short, I lost it because I didn't do my part. And then again, the incentive that you have is that people that maybe just giving a few dollars that got their whole heart in trying to help you win because they believe in you, and they support you, and they're praying for you, and they're attending functions, and they're helping you with rallies. They're wearing your bumper stickers and on their cars, and your stickers and your campaign literature are being passed out by them, and they got your posters in the yards, and you just really feel a responsibility to those people that are willing to step forward and express their opinion and their support of you. So you go flat out all out and try to do the best you can. And I think all the combination of those efforts, and we all felt like it was a venture of faith from the support level right on through our campaign workers. So we were committed, and people were able to relate to that.
Did Underwood or Watson or Lovett endorse you?
No, and I was a little, I guess, disappointed at the time because you thought, well, our personal relationships and friendliness that we had in the campaign, basically overall, I mean, it was not the kind of campaign that you might have seen in past years where everybody's mad at everybody else. We were all working hard for the position more than running against any particular candidate until it got to runoff, and then you was one-on-one at that point. But I didn't receive their endorsements because I guess really normally in the history of the state that whoever makes it to the runoff, and if the percentage is as widespread as we had between my percentage and the other runoff participant, then it's unlikely that you can gain enough momentum in 3 weeks' time to gain that much and win. And possibly the initiative was in the favor of my opponent, so that they felt like, well, I might not win and he could, and maybe they should cast their lot with him, or maybe they tossed a coin and I lost. But it enabled me to go into the primary, and we used to use the term, which is not exactly proper probably, but I used to say that I was probably freer and clearer than any candidate had ever been for governor of the state, because I didn't have any obligations, I didn't have any commitments to others that I'd had to make to gain their support or their commitment of me, of any special interest groups, including the defeated candidates. So I was clean, and I didn't have to enter into the governor's office worrying about, well, did I make commitments to this group or this person that I've got to fulfill? I came in this office with a commitment to do what I was elected to do and be the governor of the people of Georgia.
Okay, one of the most important powers I think a governor possesses is appointing people to key positions. And I was wondering, in trying to select the best people to put in these offices, what policy do you employ? How do you go about locating just the right person for the right job?
Appointments are probably the most painful responsibilities that a governor has to deal with, because you've got supporters, you've got friends, and you've got people that are already serving in those positions that want to be reappointed, want to be considered, and feel like that because of their political support that they've got claim on those positions. But I'll have to admit that my rationale and the way we've approached it has not been in the political vein at all. We've looked at it objectively. Overall, the makeup of the boards that existed when I arrived, cross-section of black, white, male, female, rich, poor, professionals, laymen, otherwise, and we tried to seek out the person or the people that would make up that group in an objective way, and keep it in an objective way. And a lot of times you're restricted because you've got to find somebody in a congressional district that might be female to make up the proper relationship of that group. And you may have a female that would be recommended to you in another congressional district, or someone that might have all kind of experience, but you can't use them because you need someone at a different geographic location, and it limits you somewhat. But we try to keep the recommendations that people make and also seek out on our own. And some of our best appointments have been people that we have sought out, that we never heard of, didn't know, never had even met on the campaign trail. And then another thing, we have never, ever looked to see who contributed, whether we choose them for a position or not, or whether they were committed staunch supporters. Now, you like to hit those people, and generally you will, because people you know are people that's been involved in your campaign, or supporters, or friends of a friend that would be recommended. And the majority of the people that you appoint are people that would have support or campaign connections. But that's a question that is never posed when we bring them in for interviews, and incidentally, I personally interview your major appointments, like Board of Regents and your agency head appointments, and also your judicial appointments. I make time available and personally recommend them. In judgeship appointments, we selected the Judicial Nominating Commission as a vehicle to screen the applicants and then pare them down where you'd have a large number of people that would be interested in a judgeship in an area. The nominating commission would screen down to the 5 top candidates, and then I would interview all 5. It would make it very difficult a lot of times as far as making a decision, because most times those 5 candidates, any of them would make a good judge, and if I made a mistake, we'd probably still get a good judge, but the pressure to try to select the one when they're all probably graded about the same level and pick out the one that you think will do the best job sometimes gets to be very difficult. But in looking back on the appointments that I've made, and also the racial makeup, we've increased the percentage tremendously of the minority representatives throughout the board appointments and even in the management level of our state government positions. I think we made good appointments. I think we've had the most excellent group of people that have stepped forward and been willing to let us consider them during this period of time, and I'm very proud of the appointments that we have, and the dedication and the team responsibility that these appointments have illustrated.
I believe you appointed a black to the Board of Regents and a woman there also. Was it one of each?
Yes, we appointed blacks and women to every level, from the judiciary right on down through the Board of Regents. And actually, the female appointment that I made earlier in my term is now the chairman of the board, and I believe the first lady chairman of the Board of Regents. I'm not positive about it, but I believe she's the first chairman. One of the black that I appointed to the Board of Regents, and incidentally I appointed a black female also to the Board of Regents, black male, black female. The black male will be the incoming chairman next year, so they're assuming responsibility and serving well.
See, Robert Benham was one of your appointees to the Court of Appeals.
Robert Benham, Judge Robert Benham, was the first black elected official statewide that was appointed to the state. And then, of course, very shortly after he was appointed, we had to assist him in running a statewide campaign in which he was overwhelmingly elected for the full term in that position. But that was the first black appointment to the Court of Appeals, and also the first black official appointed to run a statewide campaign.
Are there other black judges that you've appointed?
Yes, Superior Court judges and state court judges. We've had a number of minority appointments and a number of women appointments in those levels.
On some other positions, more recently, you've had the opportunity to appoint a state school superintendent and the director of the highway patrol. Would you comment on the process used to select those?
Yes, in any of our appointments, as I indicated earlier, we try to seek out the best qualified person that we feel would be right for the moment, or right to recommend for these positions. The state school superintendent was, of course, the vacancy existed because of death in that position, and Dr. Charles McDaniel had been very much involved in helping us to develop the quality basic education program and beginning the implementation of it. And Dr. Werner Rogers was a person that he had selected as a member of his leadership team in the Department of Education, and was a young man with a lot of experience and knowledge of education and background and working within the structure within our state. And I felt at that time that it was more to our benefit to choose a person that had experience within the reform that was in progress and the one that had been just passed, and also one that could relate to the organizations throughout the state and continue the implementation. That's one of the reasons that I selected Dr. Werner Rogers and then assisted him in his re-election in that summer right after I had selected him. in which he was elected overwhelmingly, and I was very pleased, and has done an excellent job in continuing the implementation. And I don't think the momentum of the Department of Education decreased at all. I think it continued right on and even has increased because of his knowledge and ability, and he's doing an outstanding job. The Georgia State Patrol, Department of Public Safety, that commissioner was the vacancy existed because of the need to replace the commissioner. We had an investigation over ticket fixing, and it was a period of time when the Board of Public Safety, which I'm chairman of, determined that there was a lack of leadership being exemplified there. And I think that Colonel Hardison had served well, had done an outstanding job for a long period of time, but then he had problems that I don't think at that point that it would have been in his best interest, or even the department, to try to continue. That a new, fresh leadership needed to be provided, and the ticket fixing situation needed to be worked out, and any disciplinary actions that should be taken should be exercised. And I was not sure that the existing arrangement would be able to do that properly and quickly enough to keep the credibility high and the Georgia State Patrol moving forward. So that replacement was necessary. I felt that because of the problem they had experienced and the number of people that had been there for so many years, that it was time to reach out and try to find the best person wherever, all across the United States, that could provide that leadership and bring them in. And I think we found that person. I think Colonel Curtis Harp has demonstrated already that he not only has the ability to bring new, fresh ideas to the State Patrol, but he has the ability to smooth out some of the rough spots and provide the kind of determined leadership that can maintain the credibility and also do the job and maintain public safety on our highways all across our state. And I believe that was an excellent recommendation. He's doing an excellent job, and I feel he'll continue to do a good job.
Okay. During your first term as governor, your quality-based education reform seems to receive the most publicity. I would imagine you consider that a very important accomplishment. But I'm wondering, what are some other accomplishments that occurred during that term that maybe haven't received the publicity that one has? Maybe some things stuck in the budget that really benefit the state but don't get the headline.
Well, we've had real progress in every single area of state government, and of course, because some of the progress is not dramatic, or it's not something that would be emotional, or it's not something that would affect all the people in Georgia at that one moment, well then it's not going to get a lot of attention, probably media-wise. But education and economic development has been our highest priority, and we have made tremendous progress, not only with education reform, our quality basic education program, as you indicated, but which is noted nationwide as being one of the most accountable and all-inclusive complete reforms that has been fully funded without a tax increase, which we're very proud of. But economic development, I think, is one area that maybe we have not highlighted to the public, or it has not been highlighted, the progress that we're making in comparison to some of the other states. We now have in Georgia over 1,050 foreign facilities that are located here, and we've had a 65% increase in those numbers. We have over 30 international banks in Georgia, and those numbers have been doubled during the first term of our administration. We've had over 500,000 new jobs during the first 4 years of this administration, and our unemployment has been the lowest that it has been in the in the last 8 years during that period of time. Maybe I like to look at it as our employment, more in a positive way, has been 95%, and among the highest of all the states. Our per capita income has been tops, or at least in the top 3 for the past 4 years, a percentage gain, and that shows a lot of progress. That means the new jobs we're having are better paying jobs. Standard of living is increasing in Georgia, and we're moving forward. In economic development, I think we've had an excellent package to sell, because we not only completed the Corridor Z and the Appalachian Freeway during our first term, or at least completed the funding of it, but we've had what we have called the growth corridor, the $100 million per year hotspot addresser in the transportation area that has addressed a lot of problems throughout Georgia. That I think it's been overshadowed by the so-called developmental highway system that was just really a name for a program that never had been developed. And the growth corridor concept was implementing that program, but I don't think the media has ever realized that we were doing something about the overall problem and continuing to work toward the developmental system that a lot of people had envisioned. I think that's been maybe a misnomer, because some people think developmental as such includes any improvement that you want to make anywhere in Georgia, from widening the driveway into a business to a connector to an interstate. But I think the growth corridor concept that we envisioned and recommended the funding, and the General Assembly agreed to, and the Department of Transportation has administered for the last several years, has already addressed some real needs that we've had, and can continue to be expanded upon. And that, I think, is a program that has kind of lost the public vision. Another very, very, very important area that we've made a lot of progress in, and we'll be making more progress in, is in the protection of our environmental, or at least our natural resources and the environment here in our state. We started the first year I was in office when we did not have any reserves and was having to cut the budget, the funding of a water budget. And you're not going to get a lot of play off of reporting that we were establishing a water budget for Georgia. But what that did was that in the year of the drought last year, the most severe drought we've ever had in the South, particularly Georgia, the water budget was completed. If we had just started last year, it would have been 4 years from now before it would have been completed, because it takes a large period of time to assess all the streams and know how much water comes into Georgia where it's been taken out, and then how much water you have left on downstream for the future of those people, or either the future upstream. How much water is included in the aquifers, and the projection of the rainfall, and all of those kind of things. It takes a lot of sophisticated information, but we had that planning on way, and the report was made last year, so now we know that we do have an abundance of water in Georgia for the future. But it's not all in the right places. They're going to have to be regional reservoirs built, and so now we're working to establish in those communities the regional reservoirs, and we may even be piping water as much as 35 to 50 miles to serve the needs of the growing communities throughout sections of our state. But that's possible, and it's realistic, and it's something that planning needed to be done. Another area that we've moved into is we initiated through the Hazardous Waste Authority and our natural resources public hearings that we had all across the state over the past several years, acquainting people with the need for a hazardous waste treatment facility. Now that authority is in place, working, and we will be receiving opportunities shortly to locate that facility somewhere out in the state, so that we will not lose manufacturing jobs in the future because we can't handle our waste products here in Georgia. And it is a very technical, safe way to treat the toxic waste, and incidentally toxic waste includes everything from dry cleaning fluid to the oil that you change from your automobile down to a corner service station. So it's broad, but it does not include atomic waste. And I think people are misunderstanding sometimes that when you talk about toxic waste, you're talking about atomic waste and those kind of things, but it's the everyday disposal waste from normal businesses that you cannot put underground any longer, that we must treat, and we must be realistic about it. And I feel that before I leave office, we'll have that facility in place, but then the background was laid for it during our first administration. A number of other areas that I could point to that we've been successful in, not only in industry and trade and natural resources, but human resources. We've had a number of initiatives from It's OK to Tell for child abuse to our drug abuse and DUI. Drinking and driving on our highways. And we had an initiative that reduced the overall highway deaths almost 25% in a short period of time because of our public initiatives and also the public awareness. The health service facilities and the providing vehicles within state government has been enhanced, increased, and I think we're providing a greater and a better level of services and human resources, from your Medicaid, medical assistance areas, right on down through your handicap and your disabled programs. Right on into your labor department. We now have a working relationship through this administration with the Department of Labor that has brought them into the team network. It has been very valuable and has helped us to have a team that has been available from the Labor Department and other agencies of state government to go into areas where you've had wholesale layoffs or people have lost their jobs and didn't know which way to turn for retraining and training or other opportunities somewhere else in the state or maybe in that community. The Labor Department has had a task force that we dispatch in and handle those kind of problems. We've had a working relationship through our natural resource, our National Guard and Natural Resources and our Bureau of Investigation and Georgia Department of Public Safety and other agencies of state government, even the Forestry Department and Transportation, to have a real drug eradication program. And then that same group has worked to help us when we had the situation as the problem at Forsyth County and the thousands of people that converged on that town to put together the team that enabled us to have a successful march that day and keep law and order and share the responsibilities. And I could go on in numbers of initiatives and improvements and new programs and expansions on programs that we've had that has been successful that maybe it didn't receive very much attention, but it's people doing their job and continuing the expansion of the infrastructure of state government and working with the local communities that has been valuable to strengthen the foundation here in our state so that we can keep building our future on it.
Looks like that's a very complex, intricate process with many different factors involved. And I gather also it's a long-term type of thing. You can't just immediately bring in a big factory and plan for it many years ahead. Are there any particular problems that Georgia has that is a handicap in bringing in industry? Obviously, we're competing with other states in the South and elsewhere.
I guess the biggest problem that I could point to, or maybe the only problem, is that we don't have giveaway programs in Georgia. When we get up against a prospect that maybe is not looking at the long range or maybe not looking at the real bottom line and that they would look for the short range, how much can we get back immediately by going into a state? We can't compete for that prospect. But if you give us a prospect that would look realistically at the actual facts and project it over the long range, then we can compete very favorably in Georgia. Tax-wise, per capita taxing burden that's in Georgia, the cost of living in Georgia, the education programs in Georgia, our Quick Start programs, and the transportation corridors, communication, and all the kind of things that a business is looking to, the quality of life and other aspects that are very important. We're competing very favorably, and of course the large number of new jobs that we've had indicates that we are competing. But then where we are able to, I guess, to feel a lot of satisfaction is that over 60% of the new jobs that we've had came from companies that were already in Georgia that expanded, and that means that a lot of our effort is being consumed by those that are already here, and all the time is not spent just trying to seek and chase after the new location. We spend a lot of time chasing after them, I admit that, but we don't do that at the expense of the industry that's already here that needs our help or needs our attention or needs a little help to expand. So our disadvantages are so far outweighed by the advantages until it's real hard to pick out any one problem area and say, well, this is a disadvantage. We like to look at problem areas as opportunities to turn it into an advantage. And the attitude that we approach the packaging of a program to offer to a prospect or to a person that might be expanding is that we like to try to find ways to help you overcome problems or ways to do something rather than to try to find restrictions or some way to keep you from doing something. Same way in your environmental permitting. We have a one-stop permitting capability in Georgia that other states are not able to have. We're very fortunate that we have it. Rather than trying to find ways to keep businesses from locating, we try to find a community that can fit the requirements that they might have and try to assist them. Now, we're not chasing every smokestack coming down the pike either, because we know there'll be problems in the future, but we're looking for the opportunities that will fit in the resources that we have to offer, and long-range opportunities, and I think we've been successful in doing that.
I think our time is up. Thank you very much, Governor.